And welcome back to the Inland Sports Show, everybody. Again, we're live and amplified every single Wednesday night, 6 o'clock, streaming live on Twitter, and then tape delayed for our YouTube audience a little bit later in the evening. But as you know, in the last couple of weeks, we've been talking a lot of high school football, a lot of local teams, and how they might be able to modify practices if the season starts on time. And there's so many questions, not a lot of answers at this point, but we always love to check in with our friends over at California Baptist. And of course, basketball season, we pretty much got it in. We didn't get to see maybe a postseason game or so at the arena as we were getting close. But join us here on the show. He is the head coach for the women's basketball team at CBU, Jarrod Olson. And Coach, I love to ask everyone, how they found out the news that we were going into this quarantine and everyone was going to have to stay at home. I know some teams we talked to Gary Adcock, they were playing games. I know you were just wrapping up the season. So how did you kind of find out how, when all the dust settled that, we're kind of going to hunker down for a little bit?
I mean, I think it was a little gradual, just like with everybody, but I think the moment that really sticks out to me was when the NBA shut things down. And to me, the NBA is pretty progressive and they're pretty forward thinking. And, when they decided they were going to shut some things down, I was just like, whoa, this is like a real deal. And it wasn't too far after that, the colleges started following suit. And I remember telling my wife, I'm like, hey, because our kids, we have 3 small kids. We have 5, 7, and 9. And I was like, honey, they're just not going to be in school. I mean, and she just kept arguing. She said, no, they're going to be. And I'm like, going to be in school. And then sure, it was like one of the few times I got to be right, like a couple of days later, they shut school down, and it's just been a little crazy ever since.
Well, Coach, I forget the exact date. I want to say it was about March 11th or so. That was the last time we did a live show back in the TV studio. And in fact, we had Dejon Davis from the CBU men's basketball team on the show that night. And we were talking about the potential of March, I think it was 17th, if my dates are lining up correctly, that the men's team might be hosting some sort of a postseason game. And that was the same night that the NBA shut things down. And I thought it's kind of the same thing like your wife. I'm like, well, they're not really going to shut down the NBA. Like, they're not going to really shut down the schools. Like, I mean, this is a serious thing. Don't get me wrong. But, like, they're not going to really shut down all these sports and schools and all this. And days later, sure enough, it all came tumbling down.
Yeah, it's just one of the craziest things. Obviously, most of us have not lived long enough to see anything like this, previously. And I mean, the best line that I've heard the whole shutdown was my son. He's 9. He said, "Dad, I never thought it would be so boring living through a historical event." So that's the story of it right there.
It is, and I'm hoping and praying that, we'll get 30, 40, 50 years from now and we'll be like, man, remember 2020?
Yeah.
Like, remember the pandemic? Like, that was crazy. And, we're past it and we've completely rebounded and all that. Your son's already very wise at a very young age. But, Coach, you basically got the season in. And, I was blessed to have a front row seat to pretty much all your home games, at least a good chunk of them. And I would say from the very beginning, you knew this was going to be a really good squad, and then injuries kind of took its toll. You still had a great year, and you had some great performances, but I always think in the back of my mind, man, if you guys were at full strength, this could have been a really special squad. Not taking anything away with what the team did this year, but it could have been so much better, right?
I mean, that's clearly a very fair assessment. I mean, we started the year, I think we were like 8-0 or something like that. We had our first loss of the season was against Stanford, who was number 1 in the country at the time. And we had them. I mean, it was like maybe like a 1-point game with about 1:20 to go. We got called for a moving screen. So, I mean, we're like that close to beating the number 1 team in the country. Caitlin Harper had torn her ACL like 2 days before, or a couple days before. And that was kind of like where the things just kind of tipped. We started the year off with Brittany Thomas, who's our best player, who she never even played with an Achilles injury. And Caitlin had stepped in and kind of like, was giving us, just about everything Brittany could give us. And we kind of felt like, all right, we can kind of get this thing going. And we did, and then when Caitlin hurt her knee, things just kind of fell apart for a little bit. But that's kind of misleading too, because it wasn't like it fell apart and we were getting killed. We were in every game, we just had a hard time closing things out. And then, we kind of got things together and finished the year really strong. We won, 3 in a row. I can't remember what it was, like something like 4 to 5 or something like that. And, and then we actually were in conversations for WBI postseason stuff. And then the virus hit, and, it's just kind of it was probably the craziest year I've ever been a part of. I think we only had 2 players that suited up for us that suited up every game. DeLacy Brown, a Riverside kid, and then Sydney Palma. They were the only 2 people that suited up every game. And I mean, that's insane. We had 15 people on the roster to start the year, everyone missed time for something or other. And yeah, we survived. We got through it. We had a winning record. And yeah, we're pretty excited for next year though.
Well, Brittany Thomas and Caitlin Harper are studs, but I got to give a shout out to Lexi Ram and Tiana Afu, because they had to make up for their absence in the post. And, I know Lexi Ram's a great 3-point shooter, but she would, her or Afu would normally lead the team in rebounds, in those games, having to play in the post.
It was funny for Lexi because she ended up playing 5 quite a bit at the end of the year. And when she started out as a freshman, we had a similar situation where all of our post players were hurt. And she ended up playing, literally her first game ever as a Lancer, we were on a foreign trip to Taiwan, and she started for us at the 5. And then really we played like 1 or 2 other games of that and never played it again until her senior year, the last 7 games. And so kind of nice full circle for her, but like her on the 3-point line, shooting the threes as opposed to like trying to mix it up down low.
Coach, speaking of Lexi Ram and being able to do a lot of things on the court, we talk about the current state of basketball where it's kind of positionless. I think that's the kind of term they want to use, is positionless, that players got to be able to, post up and handle the basketball and shoot and basically do everything on the floor. As you go out there and recruit, do you look for a player that can play 1 through 5, or do you try to, fill in spots at specific positions?
I mean, we're always just trying to get the best players we can get. We haven't been real specific position-wise, since I've been at CBU. I mean, obviously it's nice to have somebody like Brittany Thomas that can just grab every rebound and can kind of control the paint for you on defense. But we've played a lot of really small lineups. In our best Division II years, we played multiple point guards at the same time and would often play 5 guards or maybe 4 guards in a post. So that's been pretty normal for us. But when we're out there recruiting, we're just trying to get the best kids we can get. And we usually think we're smart enough that we can kind of figure it out if we've got good players, because the good players make us look like we're pretty smart.
Well, speaking of great players, I mean, you should have a pretty good squad coming back for next season. Are you hopeful and optimistic what this team might be able to accomplish come next season?
I mean, I think hopeful is a good word. We've got a lot of question marks. Our Caitlin and Brittany will both be coming off serious injuries. Ani Olaita, our point guard, she's from Spain. Currently she can't even get in the country because there's a travel ban. We have one of our best recruits is from France. She's in the similar boat. We've got a bunch of Australian kids that we're kind of working through some things to get them in the country as well. So we've got probably a lot more questions now than answers, but there certainly is a scenario where all those people are at CBU, which I think is fairly likely, but they're all at CBU, we're all healthy, and things look really good. But, as everyone knows, things don't usually go as planned. I think the key thing for us is going to be flexibility. And I think we're going to have more depth than usual, which will be good. And we're just going to have to be flexible, to kind of pivot at a moment's notice and just kind of see what we can do with people who are there and who are healthy.
Coach, what would you normally be doing this time of year? Is this like an open recruiting window? I mean, what could you be doing right now?
Yeah, so we'd probably just be finishing up camp stuff, and then next week I'd probably be headed out for it's about a 10 or 11 day window usually that starts it out, where you're just you're grinding it at different gyms all across the country, watching club teams play. And we'd be spending a lot of time doing that. Then there's a short break, and we come right back and do another window. And so it's really weird because we just haven't been able to do a lot of those things, as we normally do them. And we've just had to be creative and trying to figure out like how we can do some similar things. We've watched a lot of video of players. Probably watched way too much video and done way too many Zoom calls, just like everybody else. Everybody else just had to make adjustments too. But yeah, it's definitely strange because there were no camps at CBU in June, which is that hurts kids in the IE, right? The pro in particular has just killed it with camps and has about 250 to 300 kids every week, and that's a big void, that my kids feel it. They go to that camp as well, and they have a great time. I get endless questions about why we can't go to camp and eat in the cafeteria. Wish they talk more about the basketball side of it. But yeah, it's just been really strange. We're not going to be able to recruit in July either, but that's just kind of how it goes, and we're trying to be creative and find the right things to do to give ourselves the best chance to get the right players.
And Coach, finally, we've seen this date of July 12th as the date where CBU basketball players can return to campus and hopefully have some workouts on campus as well. Do you feel confident about July 12th? And what could a workout look like considering the kind of times that we're living in right now?
I think I would use the word hopeful again. Everything is kind of like, we're pushing towards that July 12th date, but just as the rest of society, we just have to be ready to switch gears when it's required. And we're going to do everything we can to get the kids on campus, but we're not going to risk anything. We're not going to put those guys at risk, health wise. We want to make sure it's a safe environment. And because we really do care about them as people, and we need to view them as people first, athletes second. In terms of like what a workout would look like, I think anything is possible at this. I've heard things, we might be able to have 10 people in there. You might only be able to get one or two. And, I've started to kind of like add up, right? If we only have 10, who's not going to be, we're going to have to do it in groups. Who's going to go with what group? And it's just everything's in play at this point. I think we're all just trying to kind of work through it and be as creative as we can while still putting the students first and giving them the experience that they want, even though it's going to be different.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing we've been really impressing on them is CBU is going to look a little bit different for you, because there's going to be different measures in place, just like the grocery store looks a little bit different. That doesn't mean it can't still be a great experience for them. CBU is still going to be a great place, but we just got to make sure it's safe, and we got to, just continue to hope and work to get them back there.
Well, Coach, I always appreciate the time. It was a lot of fun covering you guys last season, and I'm hopeful. I think that's the word right now. I'm hopeful.
Hopeful is good.
To see you guys on the floor next year, because I think you're going to have a pretty special squad if everything comes together.
We're looking forward to it, and I hope we get to see you at the event center pretty soon, Pep.
All right, that's Jarrod Olson, head coach, CBU women's basketball here on the Inland Sports Show.